So this is our Caterpillar 304 mini excavator that we are in a rent to own agreement with Dirt Perfect right now. And we got some service and some things to repair on it. There's gonna be a little bit of filming continuity because right now it's 20 degrees and snowing. And when we did some of this the other day, it was nice and sunny. So you'll figure it out. So one thing I definitely need to do on this Cat 304 is the service-wise is change that fuel filter, which is in there. And somebody crammed this thing into a stump a few years ago, and now the latch doesn't work anymore. So we gotta try to get in there and maybe get that fixed. Their latches work. Let's look back. Maybe push it. There we go. Oh, I need this fuel filter number. 37. Well, I wouldn't mind. This needs to be cleaned out for, oh goodness. Okay. Okay. I wouldn't mind picking up a new one of these too. Looks like I got the latch fixed too. We just had a piece of metal on the wrong side of where it needed to be, but looks like that's gonna function for us. So I'm okay with closing this up until we get that filter in. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Look at the function. She's mint. So for this clip, it snowed. That's fun. Good continuity there. We're taking this hose off next because we're having some work done to it. This is the main reason. That's just a recipe for a disaster, especially whenever we're stacking burn piles. Oh yeah. So here's how this hose looks now. If I've learned one thing, if we've torn something up, we will definitely do it a second time. So here's what we're gonna do. Keep this fitting the same. We're gonna shorten the overall hose by about 8 inches. Turn that into a 90 and see if they can put some extra protection on the hose for us as well. So we got the new hose made, 86 bucks, not too bad. Cisco Hydraulics in Newburgh. And I went ahead and had them put this extra abrasion protection on there because if we broke it once or tore it up once because of the rubbing, we're bound to do it again. So hopefully this helps it last a little longer, and we shortened it and changed the way it routes. Got my fancy catch pan here. Very nice. Still the O-ring Boss style swivel fitting for the bottom. 20 degrees today. They're talking the teens the next few days. Not super excited about that, but we should be back in our normal mid-40s next week, so that's good. So now, instead of this thing being long and looping down and being in the way of the thumb, we rerouted it so it can kind of do this number instead. And if we still have an issue with this routing, we can get a cylinder block for this hose. Basically a little piece of rubber. Fits right here. The hose nests down in it, and then we put a stainless clamp all the way around it to hold it secure and hold it up out of the way too. Careful not to get it on the inside. Just make it kind of loose for now. And we'll hook up our JIC on this side. Flare fitting is the seal on the JIC. The O-ring is the seal on the O-ring Boss. Threads are the seal on the pipe fitting. That's why we have to put the pipe dope on the pipe fitting. And we got the new air filter. Now a fella can just take these and blow these out every so often for quite a while. Seems like is the go-to. But at some point, they just need to be replaced. And I think we are at that point on this one. You go do the inner one too? Oh yeah, no, absolutely. We're just gonna do that off camera. Fuel filter with the water separator. Fella could throw some clean fuel in there if you wanted, but we also got a bleeder screw right here. That's what I'm going to use. If we can hit a little fuel on the top of this. Beautiful. Love every minute of it. Excellent. Little mark of professionalism here, you know, look at that. Yes. Just because we're on the step of filters, let's go ahead and swap this oil filter real quick. These look a little different. Let's see if the numbers match. 51344, 51334. We're one number off. That's okay. We'll just save that for a rainy day. So we've got this little fuel trailer that I use. It's just a little Vever plastic tote with a fuel pump and stuff on it. And it really comes in handy, especially for the 555 and obviously now for the 304 and the 755 whenever we get that put back together. It's just nice to have fuel on the property and be able to run it around and not have to mess with the 5-gallon cans as much. So this is the setup I've got, and currently the best way I do it now is I just back up with the side-by-side and I drag it around where I need it. But for like 60 bucks between the two of these and a little bit of welding, we can cut that down to just a one-trip move. Save us a little bit of time. Welder fired up here. Got the battery undone, that way we don't have to worry about any of that. What we're looking like there, just because that's probably honestly plenty of strength, but just because I think it looks a little goofy and we got plenty of scrap, I'm gonna make just a little bit of a gusset from there to there on both sides to kind of box that in. I think it'll look a little bit better, a little bit more strength. I don't think it needs the strength, but I also have no clue what I'm doing, so who knows, you know. See what we got back here in the store we can use. Oh yeah, over there. That'll work. Get our cardboard aided design out real quick. Huh? Fancy. Just trace it out. There we go. Look at those, huh? Beautiful. My gosh. What, do you own a machine shop, Mike? I know. I know, pretty wild. Clean up the edges real quick with a flap wheel. By the way, you should use a guard. Always use a guard. Highly recommend it. Don't do like I do. Take unnecessary risks because you're lazy. Because that's what I do. I also wear full face protection as well, though, including the throat. She's not the prettiest welds, but I'm pretty sure it'll hold a lightweight trailer, probably even a heavyweight trailer. And if it doesn't, we'll just weld it back. I got the paint over here on the paint warmer. Yeah, be careful not to leave it on that warmer too long, though, otherwise you'll paint your shop. Go on with that heat-baked finish. Oh, yes. Well, that's a thing of beauty right there. So the next thing is lights. I broke that one off the other day when I was doing some land clearing. That's just an older light with plastic. Not uncommon for those to snap off, especially when we're doing clearing land. And this one hasn't been on there since I've had it. Assuming it's a very similar situation for it. They're buried in the snow are the lights we're going to be using. I got this kit off Amazon. It's nothing fancy. We're just going to do a regular LED light for the boom. But then for the top of the cab, I want to do a full LED bar light. We're going to have to fabricate up a bracket to make it work, but confident we can handle that. And it does come with a bunch of wiring, switches, fuses, connectors, and brackets. Luckily, the wiring on the machine should still be good, so hopefully it's just brackets and making those connections to the lights themselves. Looks like these get mounted like that. So we need to find a way to mount these. Found this piece of tubing. We're going to cut this up and make it work. Just going to run the 4-inch grinder, turn it into a bracket. I do have a plasma cutter and it works pretty well, but the only downfall is I got to get the air compressor out, the hoses out. It's just a lot to set up. If I'm only making a few cuts like this, it's not too big of a deal to just take the 4-inch grinder, nip through it, and be done with it. But if I got a whole day cutting, we'll get the plasma cutter set up for something like that. So we ended up with a pretty simple little piece of bracket. Just radius the corners to make it, a little fancy. And then softened everything up with the flap wheel, so we got good, nice edges. We're gonna obviously take that bracket off, but then that's gonna go from tab to tab like that. And we're just gonna bolt that on. That way, if we ever decide to change it, all we gotta do is unbolt it. So one side with one hole. On this side with 2 holes, we're going to try to turn this one into a slot so we have some freedom of movement with the bracket when it goes to install. Probably marveling at how clean the shop is. That's good. That's good. A lesser man or woman would have judged somebody on the cleanliness of their shop, but you focus on what matters. And I think that's what I like about you, You don't get distracted by the little things like the fact that I'm too lazy to pick things up. That's what we like about you. I don't know how you're beveling your holes, but if it ain't like that, you're probably doing it right. It says best results at 55. Are we really going for the best results? Okay. You have to. Can't feel my fingers. That's fun. It's a pretty rare occasion we need lights on the excavator, but when you need them, you need them, you know? It's one of those things. So we want them to be halfway decent. Normally if we're running lights, something's gone wrong that day. And we're moving it at night or doing something at night and something isn't what it's supposed to be. You can see here that when they put that one on, they cut, spliced it, and put their own thing on. So to avoid splice, we'll cut back far enough that that can all run together. Here's the other thing I don't know. I don't know which one is positive and negative. If I had to guess, let's just get the voltmeter out and see real quick. So ground into the machine, power on this, I get touch over 12 volts. Match, 12 volts. So black is in fact the negative for the ground. Lo and behold, we have a light. I don't know if it's bright enough or how bright it's going to be. Had really good reviews on the Amazon. You know, fella can't complain. Believe it or not, it isn't tacky anymore. So, it's either frozen or dry enough to install. Not bad. And then with the light up there, looks pretty good. It's not quite as low pro as I'd imagined. That's probably the installer's fault, if I had to guess. Wiring. So the next thing we need to do, you can see I'm missing a tooth. We're going to go ahead and put another one on. It came with some extras. This is the closest. In fact, I believe that's the same tooth, just not as worn down. So we'll try to get that on there. So what happens, see how these are all wobbly? What happens over time, this shank gets worn down. And as that shank gets worn down, you get all this freedom of movement. And when you get that freedom of movement and you put a lot of pressure, especially on one tooth by itself, like you're digging a rock and only one tooth has the brunt of the force, brunt of the pressure, you put that pressure on the pin itself because it leverages down on it instead of putting the pressure on the shank where it's supposed to go. So at some point when it warms up, and I'm not going to do it now, not this time of year, I'm not overly concerned about it. If we go ahead and get a tooth on it, at least we'll keep that shank from wearing down any more than what it is now. But at some point, we'll take all those pins out, all the teeth off, and you just kind of have to spend the day welding and grinding, welding and grinding, welding and grinding until you get as tight as a fit as you can so that all the pressure from that tooth goes into the shank, and then you won't break as many pins. The other option is you can always do the Andrew Camerata and just weld them on. Certainly an option, not a dang thing wrong with that. It's your machine. If that's what a fellow wants to do, by all means, go ahead and do it, you know. But this is the way we're going to do it. Just throw another bolt in it for the time being. Looks like that routing is going to work quite a bit better for us. I still might go ahead and get something to hold it, but I'm much happier with it than I was. Peep the lights, by the way. Huh? That's fancy. When it lights stuff up in its daytime, I feel like it's going to do okay at night. The other thing we're not going to fix that people are always upset about, the floppy bucket. We're not doing that yet. We'll do it eventually, but everybody says it's the pins and the bushings and the boom. It's not, believe it or not. The machine itself is actually pretty tight. All the slop All the slop is right here in the quick coupler. See all that? And there's a lot in there. Now Mike's built this up and tightened it up at least once. I think maybe twice. I know for sure once because I worked for him when he did it. And when he did that, he also added some more steel on the inside of this to try to take some of that out. It's not too bad with buckets like this, but when we get the wider buckets, when we get a lot of pressure on one side or the other, and it does that kind of twist maneuver on it, it just kind of starts eating one side out and then the other side matches it. Over time, you end up with a sloppy coupler. All we got to do, I say all we got to do, it's a lot of work. Weld it, grind it, weld, grind, weld, grind, weld, grind until we get a little tighter. But I'm not too worried about it. Honestly, it doesn't bother me at all. Good carpenter doesn't blame his tools. And if you can't dig a decent trench with a sloppy bucket, I don't think a tight bucket's going to do you much good either. I do want to see if I got something that'll work for a keeper on that pin though. Put a little bit of that magic sauce on there. Well, we'll see if that lasts more than a season. The last thing that I need to get done is we need to make a template to get this glass replaced. One awesome thing about this machine, the front of it anyway, it's all flat glass. So we can just make a template. Every time this glass has been broken, which I think has been 2 times before, at least once, we just make a template, take it to our local glass shop. They cut us a piece of glass out and we put it in. We don't have to buy anything through CAT. Now if we ever break this glass, that's going to be super expensive and not a great time. Yeah, it looks good. Figure out where the door comes down. Because it's made that goes under that, so the glass kind of hangs over. This is the one, I can feel it. Trim the top just a little bit. We are seated firmly in our clips. See if we're looking pretty good. It probably needs to sit up about another 1/8. But honestly, I think we can just make some notations on the template. You know, I feel like I could make that work. Fill the inside of that, not fill, but put window sealant like you would, like automotive window sealant. Set it on there kind of loose, lower the windshield down and let it push it where it wants to go with the window sealant. Because if I make it too tall, I can't do a lot about it. Some service, some repairs, some improvements. Huh? Not bad. Next video, right back on this thing. It's supposed to be 16 degrees tomorrow, so we're gonna take this out. Oh, now that's neat. And sit in the heat of the cab and do a big old burn pile. Because again, 16 degrees, you know? Lots of stuff coming in for the YouTube yacht, so we're getting ready to go full tilt on that. Stuff showed up yesterday, stuff showing up tomorrow. Some more stuff next. Just tons of stuff coming in, quite literally. Very excited. It's expensive to own a machine, no doubt about it. And although it seems, and when I think about how much we're spending on this machine, it gives me a little anxiety. But when I look back and I realize that had I started this agreement with Mike a year ago, we'd be halfway through paying this thing off. That's how much we rented it anyway. It just seems to make sense to keep going with this and make sure we keep up with the small stuff, because if we don't keep up with the small stuff like we did today, then eventually that turns into big stuff. And that's a problem.